UFC 297 is this weekend, and in this video, I'm going to go over the entire card, including the early prelims, and there's 4 things we're going to take a look at: a quick stat overview of each fighter, 2 visuals that compare some more stats, and then most importantly, each fight's predictions from 6 different prediction models that I coded. With all of those things considered, I'll give you guys a final pick for each fight and a confidence percentage which can help you in your picks and bets, and hopefully you could find some value bets with this. I'm a data scientist and a data analyst, so I love this kind of stuff. Also a huge fan of the UFC. Grew up watching it, as I'm sure that many of you guys did. Before we get started, I'm very new here, so if you find this helpful or interesting, please consider subscribing and liking. It'll help me continue creating these and just staying motivated, and we can build a nice community together where we're all passionate about MMA. Alright, let's jump into the first fight. Alright, so up first we have Malcolm Gordon versus Jimmy Flick. These two fighters have similar overview stats. They're the same height and age. Gordon has a 3-inch reach advantage, a slightly better significant strike accuracy, and is slightly more accurate with his takedowns. Flick, on the other hand, lands a way more significant number of strikes per minute. He lands slightly more takedowns on average and has way more submissions on average. So here's our key stats visualized on a radar chart. The way you'd read this chart is if a fighter's radar or ring, whatever you want to call it, is wider, then it means that they're better in that specific stat. By looking at this, we can quickly determine who, at least on paper, has better stats. So you can see how this one's pretty close. Gordon has better takedown defense, Flick is more accurate with his significant strikes, and Gordon has a slight advantage when it comes to takedown accuracy and significant strike defense. Here's more of their stats on a bar chart. The way you'd read this chart is if a fighter's bar is bigger, then it means that they're better in that specific stat. So Flick attempts way more submissions, but also absorbs way more significant strikes than Gordon. Based on this information, Flick seems to have a striking advantage and Gordon seems to have a takedown advantage. Let's look at those prediction models. So again, the odds are favoring Gordon. 4 out of 6 prediction models are leaning towards Gordon. The neural network model gave this fight a 50-50. The gradient boosting model seemed to favor Flick. All things considered, I'm going with Malcolm Gordon in this fight and giving him a 57% chance of beating Jimmy Flick. Now, I'm probably going to butcher the name here, but up next we have Jasmine Jasudavicius and Priscilla Cachoeira. The odds are pointing towards Jasmine as a heavy favorite. She's 1 year younger than Priscilla, has a 3-inch reach advantage, is more accurate with her significant strikes, lands more takedowns on average, and is more accurate with her takedowns. Priscilla tends to land more significant strikes per minute, but that's her only advantage in these overview stats. Looking at the radar chart, Jasmine leads in 4 of the 5 stats, while Priscilla's only advantage here are landed significant strikes. The bar chart shows that Priscilla absorbs more significant strikes, which is another negative stat for her. The prediction models unanimously predict Jasmine, so I'm going with Jasmine Jasudavicius and giving her a 75% chance of beating Priscilla Cachoeira. Up next, we have Johan Lioness versus Sam Patterson. The odds are pointing towards Lioness, however, Patterson seems to have a majority of the advantages in these overview stats. He has a 2-inch height advantage, he's 4 years younger, has a 2-inch reach advantage, lands more significant strikes per minute, lands way more submissions on average, and is more accurate with his significant strikes. The radar chart supports the odds and it shows us stats that favor Lioness. Lioness has better takedown defense, he's more accurate with those takedowns, and has better significant strike defense. The bar chart points out that Patterson tends to attempt more submissions than Lioness, but Lioness has better takedown stats in general. The prediction models unanimously predict Johan, so I'm going with Johan Lioness and giving him about a 62% chance of beating Sam Patterson. Up next, we have Gillian Robertson versus Polyana Viana. The odds are pointing towards Robertson. She's 3 years younger, has a way better takedown average and takedown accuracy. Viana, on the other hand, has a 4-inch reach advantage. She lands more significant strikes per minute and with more accuracy. She also has a higher submission average. The radar chart shows that this one's pretty close. Viana has a striking advantage while Robertson has a takedown advantage. Other stats are pretty even. The bar chart highlights Viana's submission attempt advantage and how she lands more significant strikes per minute. Robertson lands more takedowns, but unfortunately she absorbs more significant strikes per minute compared to Viana. The prediction models were a bit mixed, but when you weigh the results together, they're slightly favoring Viana. The support vector machine model skewed the prediction, so I'm actually picking against the model in this one and leaning more towards Robertson, giving her a 61% chance of beating Viana. Up next, we have Siri Saidi versus Ramon Taveras. There's not much data available for these two fighters, so I couldn't run them through all of the models, but let's just look at their stats and see what we can determine. Saidi has a 3-inch height advantage, he's 3 years younger, and has a 2-inch reach advantage. Taveras lands more significant strikes per minute and with greater accuracy. The odds are slightly leaning towards Saidi. The radar chart actually supports Taveras' advantages in striking and striking defense. Saidi has won more of his last 5 fights compared to Taveras, but Taveras leads in striking advantages. I'm leaning towards Saidi and giving him a 61% chance of beating Taveras. I'm going off of his height, his reach, his age advantage, and it seems like the odds are leaning towards him as well. Up next, we have Charles Jourdain versus Sean Woodson. Jourdain is 3 years younger. He lands more significant strikes per minute and lands more accurately. Woodson has a whopping 5-inch height advantage, a 9-inch reach advantage, and he has better takedown and submission stats. You can see Woodson's advantages in his radar chart, and they're because of his takedown stats. The bar chart tells a similar story with Woodson having advantages. The prediction models are leaning towards Woodson, but I'm going to go against the model and choose Charles Jourdain, but I'll give him a very low probability of about 55% to beat Woodson. The reason I'm going against the model is because Jourdain is the better fighter. If he can close the distance and maybe land some vicious body kicks, then I'll think he'll likely win. I don't genuinely see a path for Woodson to win here, but if you're looking for a value bet, then this might be one of them. That's why I'm going with a lower probability. Alright, up next we have Brad Katana versus Garrett Armfield. Katana is a favorite in this fight. He has greater significant strike accuracy and lands more takedowns on average and with a greater accuracy. Armfield is about 5 years younger. He has a 5.5 reach advantage. Both fighters are the same height. The radar chart shows us some advantages that Armfield may have in his defensive stats for his takedowns and his striking. The bar chart also highlights this. This seems to be a pretty even fight other than the reach advantage. The prediction models actually have this fight split 50-50 once you weigh all the models together. You can see certain models pick Katana and other models pick Armfield. I'm going with Brad Katana here, but not by a very large margin. With everything considered, I calculate he has about a 58% chance of beating Garrett Armfield. Up next, we have Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev. The odds are pointing towards Evloev. He has a 2.5-inch reach advantage, lands more significant strikes per minute, and with far more accuracy, and he has takedown advantages. Allen has a 1-inch height advantage and lands slightly more submissions on average. So the radar chart shows how close these fighter stats are, with Evloev having a slightly better strikes landed and accuracy stats. The bar chart for this one, it highlights Evloev's ability to perform more takedowns in a 15-minute period than Allen. Both fighters absorb relatively the same amount of strikes. So the models are pointing towards Evloev, with only one of the models suggesting Allen takes the fight. All things considered, along with the odds, I calculate that Movsar Evloev has a 61% chance of beating Arnold Allen. Up next, we have Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault. The odds are leaning towards Chris Curtis. He has a 1.5-inch reach advantage and lands significant strikes more accurately. Barriault, on the other hand, has a 3-inch height advantage, is 3 years younger. He lands more significant strikes per minute, has takedown advantages, and lands more submissions on average than Curtis. The radar chart highlights how Curtis has better takedown defense, but Barriault has better takedown accuracy. Other stats are pretty close. The bar chart shows Barriault's advantage when it comes to grappling stats. Chris Curtis tends to absorb more significant strikes, but only by a little bit. The models are all leaning towards Chris Curtis, except for one. When you weigh the models, they give Curtis a 53% chance of winning. I'd probably bump that up to 59%, given Curtis's fight experience and his abilities. Up next, we have Neil Magny versus Mike Mallet. The odds are heavily favoring Mike here in this matchup. He's 4 years younger. He lands more significant strikes per minute. He has takedown advantages and has better submission average. On the other hand, Magny has a 2-inch height advantage, a 7-inch reach advantage, and a higher significant strike accuracy. The radar chart highlights Magny's advantage in takedown defense and Mike's advantage in significant strikes landed and takedown accuracy. The bar chart shows how this fight is a bit lopsided. We see a lot more red than we do black, except for in takedown defense. The weighted model results give Mike a 63% chance of beating Magny, but all things considered, I'd bump that up to 71% when you consider his skill set. Up next, we have the co-main event, Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. The odds are pointing towards Silva. She's 3 years younger, lands more significant strikes per minute, and with higher accuracy, has almost twice as good of a takedown accuracy than Pennington, and has a way higher submission average. Pennington, on the other hand, has a 1-inch height advantage, a 1-inch reach advantage, and lands more takedowns on average. The radar chart really highlights how more accurate Silva is at landing takedowns. The bar chart highlights how Silva is better at submission attempts and takedown defense. However, Pennington absorbs less significant strikes and lands more takedowns as mentioned earlier. This one's pretty even. The prediction models are slightly leaning towards Pennington when you look at the weighted results. However, it's being a bit skewed by the support vector machines model. I'm actually going to go the opposite direction and give Mayra Bueno Silva a slight advantage at about 56% to beat Raquel Pennington due to her dynamic fighting approach, her agility, her ability to adapt to various styles, and her transitions. However, if you're looking for a value bet, consider this fight as well since it's really close. And last but not least, our main event of the evening, Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. The odds are slightly leaning towards Strickland in this fight. Both fighters have the same height. Strickland is more accurate with his takedowns. Du Plessis, on the other hand, is 2 years younger, lands more significant strikes per minute and with greater accuracy, lands more takedowns on average, and way more submissions on average. The radar chart highlights Strickland's diverse skill set and his advantages in takedown stats and his ability to defend significant strikes. Du Plessis has advantages when it comes to landing significant strikes and his accuracy as well. The bar chart highlights how Du Plessis attempts more submissions and lands more takedowns. Strickland has greater takedown defense and significant strike defense. The models are actually favoring Du Plessis in this fight, giving him a 60% chance of beating Strickland. However, I'm going to go in the opposite direction here by a very small margin though, and say that Sean Strickland has a 51% chance of beating Du Plessis. The reason I made the switch is because I rewatched Strickland's fight with Israel Adesanya, and he seems like his game plan is more bold, although at the same time calculated. He's able to stare death in the face, push forward, apply relentless pressure, take shots, throw a high volume of strikes, and weather any storm. I don't think he's going to completely dominate Du Plessis, especially because of Du Plessis' stats that we've seen, so I'm giving him a tiny benefit of confidence here. 51% is a toss-up, guys. This is another value bet to consider because of that. That's it for UFC 297's breakdown, data analysis, prediction model results, and picks. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did or found this entertaining or informative, please do me a favor and like the video and subscribe. It'll help me continue creating these and staying motivated, and we can build a nice community together. Also add me on Twitter. I love live tweeting during fights and engaging with everybody. Thank you all, and see y'all for the next event.